welcome to Your Vote on Your TV. And today we have candidates representing the two parties of the Ontario NDP and the Green Party from Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock. Now, originally we were supposed to have a debate with all four candidates being present. We are very optimistic that all four would agree. But through all of our correspondence, we never heard back from the PC candidate, Laurie Scott, and the Liberal Party has not yet formally selected their candidates. So with us today is Barbara Doyle, representing the Ontario NDP Party, and we have Tom Regina, representing the Ontario Green Party. So I think we'll start the debate or a conversation with a little bit about each of the candidates. So I'll let Barb go first, and you have about a minute and a half to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much, Zach. So my name is Barbara Doyle, and I am running for the Ontario NDP. This will be my second run at a provincial election. I'm from Lindsay. I grew up there, and I am the managing director of the Kawartha Lakes Museum and Archives. So I have a really deep connection to our local history, our local community. I am an advocate for healthcare, with being one of the co-founders of the Kawartha Lakes Health Coalition, and I've done a lot of advocacy work in domestic violence areas. I'm really dedicated to ensuring that Kawartha Lakes, Haliburton and Brock all have the core services that they need, and maybe this will be the election that we actually see some change in the riding.
And Tom.
My name is Tom Regina, and I am living in Haliburton. I've been living in Haliburton for 35 years. I taught high school there. I was the head of the arts department. I am involved in the arts community. And since my retirement, I started to get involved in politics, looking around for a political home, because I felt abandoned by my the party that I was supporting the most. And as I looked through all the policies, I found that the Green Party was the one that had the values and the policies that I was the most interested in. And so I became a volunteer, and eventually through friends and colleagues, find my way to being a candidate. And so this is my second time as the candidate for Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock. And I'm looking forward to growing the green movement in our riding.
Wonderful. So considering each of you have run in an election before, Tom, this is your second time, Barbara, this is your third time, what actually inspired you to put your name in one last time, or maybe you have one more in you, for this specific election? I'll go to you, Tom, first.
What inspired me to run in, as a candidate? I have really strong feelings about the green values, and the I'm sorry. I feel very strongly about the green values, and being a candidate, I really think it's important to have more green MPPs in the legislature. I think that our province of Ontario is going to be better off with more voices at the table, and this is what I would really like to see. This is what I'm working towards. And if I'm going to be chosen as one of those green voices, then I'm going to be very happy to go and represent Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock in the legislature and be a voice for the people here.
And Barbara, what inspired you to run for a third time?
Well, actually, it was a tough decision, because I have a really fantastic job. I love my job at the museum and am grateful for it. But I've always felt that I want to serve my community more and actually get more for our community through that service. I am really angry, actually, that this election was called. It's a waste of funds. Doug Ford didn't need a mandate. He already had a majority government. This was simply a bid for him to seize 4 additional years of power. And over and over again, we've seen that the Ford government hasn't followed through on their actual promises, instead of doing projects that are wasteful and not actually necessary. And we need change in this riding. We absolutely need change. We have seen 7 years of the Ford government has been a bad relationship. It's a toxic relationship, and I think we need to break up with them. And I would like to put myself forward as an alternative choice to Laurie Scott, who doesn't show up for debates, doesn't answer to her electorate, and doesn't actually serve her constituents. Where has she been? And what has she promised? She's done nothing. And I think it's disgraceful. And I would like to actually be able to serve the people of our communities and get all of the core services back that we need, that our people depend on, and try and improve everything that we need here. You know, education, healthcare, housing, basic affordability on the day-to-day. And that is what is driving me every day to be on the campaign trail and, you know, hoping to talk to as many people as possible to make a change in this riding, a change for the better, because our families deserve better than what they're getting now.
And if you had to pick one specific issue, and Tom, I'll ask you the same question as well, that means most to residents, constituents in Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock, if you had to pick one issue, what would it be? What one do you care about the most?
I think I'm very strongly on record in healthcare issues. You know, we fought really hard to try and save the Ross against the legislative change in 2022. We did have an impact on the ground on that in actually changing some of the language of that legislation for the better to protect the hospital. But we need more family doctors, we need better long-term care, we need more nurses, we need actually wage parity. And the Minden ER needs to be reopened. Laurie Scott didn't fight for that at all. She actually blamed HHS for the closure, which is ridiculous. It's been chronically underfunded. When you destabilize an entire healthcare industry in the hopes of being able to privatize it and paying 2 to 3 times more the cost from the taxpayer dollar, I think that is a really big issue to stand behind and stand on in this election. In 2018, Doug Ford ran on ending hallway medicine. And today, 7 years later, it is actually 125% worse than it was in 2018. So if there was 100 people waiting in the hallways, now there's 225. And that's disgraceful. So I'm running on that.
Okay, so your issue locally is healthcare in the province?
Yes.
Tom, locally, Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock, you live up in Haliburton County. What issue matters most to you that you want to get fixed?
Well, when I go and I talk to the constituents, the voters, healthcare is definitely the issue that comes up the most. And of course, with the Minden ER closure, that's created a lot of ill will for our local MPP and for our provincial government. And the healthcare issue of underfunding, as Barbara mentioned, is kind of like a thin edge of the wedge issue. The way I see it is opening the door for privatization. And so this is something that is starting to make people angry, and I really hope that people will get up out of their seats, excuse me, and actually go out and get voting, because in this election it's projected that fewer than 4 out of 10, somewhere between 3 and 4 out of 10 people are actually going to go out and vote. And that's going to, that just won't get the voices out there that are really angry about that particular issue. Healthcare is definitely what people are talking about the most.
So now we'll shift into, I guess, the actual debate. You got the easy questions out of the way, relax,
Okay.
Put back your shoulders a little bit, and we're going to move into tariffs. I hope each of your parties has released something about how you would fight Donald Trump down south. And Premier Doug Ford himself has said that, you know, this entire election was called so that he and the Progressive Conservatives can seek a new mandate in order to deal effectively with the threats and actions of the U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, all parties have released a platform outlining that these tariffs are unjust and that all parties across the spectrum want to have a Team Canada or a Team Ontario approach. So what exact measures are each of your parties supporting that will make Ontario resilient after tariffs are enacted and put in place? Tom.
Well, the platform is being released, the Green Party platform is being released today at 11 o'clock. And there will certainly be some ways of addressing the issues of tariffs and opening up supply chains within Ontario and cross-border supply chains, finding other places to get materials from, not depending so much on the United States is going to be important. And particularly Ontario-based manufacturing and Ontario-based foods. For example, we have local businesses that source their materials or their foods from local farmers or locally, and they will be compensated or incentivized to do so. So there's a way of incentivizing businesses to buy locally or within Canada, or to find the other supply chains rather than the United States. And then also there's going to be not just incentives, but also help for businesses that are unfairly marginalized by having to deal with the tariffs. Yeah.
And businesses are certainly a part of the solution to tariffs, but who else will be affected are workers, right? Workers in the industries. Yes. Do you have any specific plans on targeting and helping workers who might lose their jobs?
Well, I haven't seen the platform, but we can hear that all of the parties are talking about saving jobs, saving the auto sector, finding, again, different supply routes, manufacturing our own steel, and just trying to make sure that the people who are going to be losing jobs are going to be able to transition easily into, or more easily into, a green economy that is more based in Ontario. We have a lot of resources, minerals that for example, electrification industry is looking for, and we have that here, and we can certainly create more jobs in a green economy.
And Barbara, what exact measures would your party put in place aside from a Team Ontario, Team Canada approach?
Thanks for the question. So the tariff problem it's a real problem, but there's been a lot of fear-mongering about this. There's been a lot of justification for the call of this election, as Tom said, that only the Conservatives can fight Donald Trump. But realistically, the federal government and the premiers need to work together. In Ontario, we have lots of options. We have so many raw materials that we can work with here. We have supply chains that can be opened up. But we are instituting more of a Buy Ontario, Buy Canadian kind of process, supporting our workers. NDP is obviously, for workers and labor. So we would be putting programs in place to ensure that people who may lose their jobs, and it's not certain that people will lose their jobs at this point, that they would be supported, and that there would be programs in place to support businesses that may be affected by the US tariffs. We can see a variety of options, and this is not necessarily platform, but this is something that would be a reasonable solution or a reasonable approach. When you hear Doug Ford saying, oh, I'm going to turn off their electricity. Well, realistically, if you turned off the electricity to the United States, into all those northern states, it would affect people in their homes. It's the middle of February. It would be very catastrophic, but also hospitals. I mean, people could die. So a better choice would be to hit the US where it actually hurts, and that's selective tariffs back on products that are not necessarily necessities here in Ontario or in Canada, but also looking at changing the pricing structure for our oil and gas, for our electricity. Donald Trump has broken the trade agreements, so pricing agreements are basically on the table to be renegotiated or to be increased. So let's look at those kinds of solutions of a pushback economically rather than, I guess, more drastically.
And you did mention the NDP would be obviously supporting labor.
Yes.
Okay, that was a broad statement. Could you elaborate on any specific industries that you would prioritize with specific programs? You named programs, but that could be in any form.
Yes, so I don't have names of specific programs at this moment. I know that our party is talking about a variety of assists depending on the sector, because different sectors may be impacted differently. So rather than looking at a broad sweeping one-size-fits-all solution, sometimes you have to look at the different industries and the different tariffs that are coming in on how they affect the products that are being brought across. One of the things for Ontario, especially in our auto market, our auto sector, is that there's piecemeal manufacturing. So things that go across the border, then they come back across the border and be assembled here. So are there opportunities for us to look at supporting workers in those sectors that are most impacted, and maybe sectors that are less impacted, maybe they would get a different kind of assistance. And I know that the NDP has also looked at retraining programs into green economy and green manufacturing. So that way, we can look forward while we're dealing with this challenge across the border.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And Doug Ford has been the most vocal premier in Canada against Donald Trump's tariffs. He's the one going out there talking to American news networks, really trying to get the opinions of Ontario out into American audiences. And voters always want options, right? And each party has been united, but I want one from each of you, one policy that is different than the Conservatives' policy on tariffs. The Conservatives want to protect jobs, right? They want to protect businesses, and they want to hit back on Donald Trump. So which policy, specifically to your party, is something that you can champion, Tom?
I can't tell you about a specific policy that I haven't seen the policy book that's coming out later today, and I'm sure that what we see among all of the parties is that there is a great deal of overlap, and so as you're asking for a specific thing that is completely different from the other parties, I can't give you an answer for that at the moment.
Thank you. And Barbara?
So for the NDP platform, part of it will be to source as locally as possible, sourcing Ontario, sourcing Canadian manufacturers. I would say that would be different than the Conservatives. If you look at the recently announced tunnel project to go underneath the 401, one of the corporations that Doug Ford has identified to work on that project is the Boring Corporation, which is owned by Elon Musk. So when you add that to the Starlink contract for $100 million, why is Premier Ford actually sending millions and millions of dollars out of our country and choosing out-of-country contracts? We could be doing that work here. Why would he not source a Canadian company to do that work, especially in the midst of a tariff dispute? So I think that sourcing at home, giving jobs to Canadians, giving jobs to local manufacturing, and ensuring that those revenues, those incomes stay within our borders and actually improve our local economies is so much more important and smart. I don't understand why Doug Ford would choose that when he's claiming to be for Team Canada, and yet he's sending so much of our money out of the country.
Thank you, Barbara. We do have to go to break very quickly, but when we come back, we will be talking a little bit about, to each candidate's affordability questions as it relates to housing, homelessness, mental health, and healthcare as a total. So we will be right back. Welcome back to Your Vote here on Your TV. And we're going to continue our debate with the Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock's candidates, Barbara Doyle and Tom Regina. If you are just joining in now, PC candidate Laurie Scott did not return any of our requests to participate. So here we are with two candidates. So I want to start off with you guys here, a little bit about affordability in the general sense, right? We'll get into housing, we'll get into food, right? But affordability, the cost of living conversation. And I think the tariff conversation is a perfect segue into this general affordability talk. And I want to start off by asking, what do you think is the number one reason some 60% of Ontarians access the food bank over the last 2 years? Barb.
Price hikes at the grocery store is one main reason. We've seen a high percentage of increase during COVID. There was, supply chain issues to justify it, but after COVID was over and the supply chains were fine, they didn't come back down. We've seen large corporations basically take advantage of people every day at the grocery stores. So when you combine that with stagnant wages and really high housing costs. So across the board, you have a lot of costs that impact people for things that they absolutely require. You need housing, you need food on the table, and you need to be able to have an income that will cover all of those things. So when you have that trifecta where there's too high pricing on certain items and then not enough wage coming in, it's a bad situation. So we need to do more to improve affordability through measures in all of those sectors.
You mentioned price gouging.
Yes.
How would you then lower those food prices? What policies?
Thanks for the question, actually. So the NDP has released in our platform, basically it is a monthly grocery rebate to help households, whether you're an individual or a family, to be able to afford the increase in the pricing of groceries. It's not meant to pay your entire grocery bill, but for instance, a single person earning under $60,000 a year would get about $40 back a month, and a family earning combined about $100,000 a year would be $122 a month. Help to offset your groceries. But combined with that, there would be a plan to actually deal with price gouging with the corporations. So making sure that there's a process in place that they would be required to show the change in percentages, the change of pricing at the sticker on the shelves, but also going after corporations that are price fixing or really charging way too much for the groceries that they have on their shelves. So I like the thought that we have immediate help for families in need, as well as a plan to stop the continued rise in the sector. So it's help now, but a plan to stop it from continuing.
Thank you. And Tom?
Yes, your question is about more access to the food banks.
Yeah, why do you think?
There's more people going to the food banks.
Yep.
And of course, and with affordability being the issue, you have to have food, you have to have a place to live, you have to pay for your other expenses, you have to put gas in the car. So the food bank is a place where you can actually go and get some food. You can't go to the gas station and get some extra gas. There's a heat bank in Haliburton where if you have problems getting heat, there's a community effort so that you can have some access to that. But the food banks are the only place where you can sort of pick up the slack. So and why is there slack, right? The difference between the haves and the have-nots is getting greater all the time. The gap is wider than it's ever been. Barbara mentioned the stagnation of wages, and the Greens are proposing a $20 an hour minimum wage. And doubling the ODSP is something that the Greens came out with, and and it's such a good policy that all the other progressive parties jumped on it as well and adopted it, because it is a really good idea. Having legislated poverty is a crime in this province, which is one of the wealthiest regions in the world, really. There's absolutely no need for any of our services to be cut or to be withheld. So what has to be done is the people who are have not been able to keep up with their wages, that has to be increased, certainly, right? The minimum wage being increased, and then the ODSP being doubled. And that is a way to begin getting in a policy of a basic income. And when you take those items together, then you're going to be able to find those extra few dollars for the prices as they're going up to the grocery store. The grocery supplement that Barbara mentioned is seems to me almost a little bit like like the Doug Ford's $200 a gift, election gift. But if it comes in, every dollar helps, and I know that there's a lot of families up in Haliburton where that $200 is not going to be something that they just fluff away. It's going to help them. So addressing the fact that a large part of the population has been left behind is what the Green Party is proposing, with the doubling of the ODSP and increasing the minimum wage.
And do you support any measures that would put price control specifically on food prices or other essentials, insurance? Personally.
Well, farmers have to be able to make money. Farmers have to be able to get a fair price for their products, and they have to be able to be allowed to grow the food. And what we have going on in this province is we're going to be losing farmland. We're losing hundreds of acres a month to development. So we want to be able to establish a food belt as well as a green belt, where farmland is not going to be utilized for development. It's going to be protected land for farm use to create, to have farming, to have food production in Ontario. And when the food is produced here, it's not being transported from farther away. So those costs for transporting the food will be reduced.
Thank you. And I guess moving along to housing, each of you mentioned housing as a cornerstone to the affordability talk. And it is something that really affects everyone in the Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock and Canada as a whole, whether you're a renter or an owner. And many Ontarians are struggling with rising housing costs, rising rent increases. And so what specific policies would you both implement to make housing more affordable to both renters and to owners? Barb.
That's a great question. So we have seen in our riding a housing explosion. But there's builders popping up subdivisions kind of everywhere, but they're not really what I would term affordable. When you're looking at a house or a townhouse for $800,000, that is a stretch for a lot of people. The NDP wants to bring in more stringent, or basically close the loopholes on rent control, so putting rent control back on even current build units. So Doug Ford had taken away rent control on anything built after 2018, including retrofits. So that would actually create an opportunity for people who are renting to have some stability. They would know how much their rent may increase each year, rather than the uncertainty of a landlord saying, oh, I'm just going to raise it $500 this month, and now you have a choice of paying an outrageous extra charge, or you have to find somewhere else to live. And when you have a very tight rental market, it's really hard for people to do that. So more of your income ends up going towards housing. We are also looking at either building or acquiring more affordable non-market, so subsidized housing units, as well as market units in an affordable, like a truly affordable price range, to help people in Ontario as well, and specifically kind of in our riding as well, to ensure that more stock is available in more attainable price ranges, meeting people where they are in terms of local wage points. It's a lot different in Toronto than it is here. So looking at local efforts and working with municipalities directly to ensure that we, take back some of the downloading to the municipalities for development costs. That really affects local property taxes, and ensuring that ensuring that housing truly is a human right. We have vowed to make sure that homelessness is basically eradicated by 2030 by building more units and making more units affordable to get people into housing. Housing first strategy is proven to work, and we need more of it here.
So I'll get to you, Tom, in 1 second. What specific, you've said a lot. You said
Yeah.
supportive housing, you said affordable housing, you said
Yes.
market housing, you said public housing.
Yes,
It's a lot.
it is. Because we
What
have to take a
specific
broad approach.
timeline, though,
Oh.
does your party propose for the completion of all these
Yes.
different units?
So there is a variety of timelines because certain solutions are more easy to enact right away. And I have worked in real estate and worked for housing development actually. So developing new lots, developing new units can take a couple of years, 2 to 3 years actually, from shovels in the ground to completion to move in. So we do see this as a bit of a, I'm not going to say a long-term solution, but certainly 5 to 10 years by the time we really are able to complete a lot of these units. But rent control right away, obviously, and converting units and purchasing already built units will have a greater impact more quickly, and that is part of our plan. So we'll build and acquire.
Thank you. Tom, what policies would you want implemented as a Green Party member to help bring down the cost of both rent and housing prices for those who want to buy?
Well, this week it was announced, Mike Schreiner announced a housing policy, a pathway for home ownership, for being able to, for young people to be able to buy their first home, some incentives and also some help with loans, interest-free loans, especially for nonprofit housing and for co-op housing to be able to lease government land for free and to forego having to pay development taxes so that the building costs can be that much lower. So housing and homes should really be for people and for families, not for speculators. And investors, which is the way that it has gone since the 1980s and the 1990s when the governments got out of investing in housing. And so that has to be brought back. The housing cooperatives and co-op housing, the obstacles that they have been put in their place and that they are experiencing have to be lifted, and so that they can be creating more units and other forms of housing, such as community housing for how some of the seniors can group together and live in a home together. There are municipal rules against some of this type of housing, and so those things have to be eased as well.
And which specific rules would you want eased in terms of a municipal bylaw or municipal zoning regulation? The allowing of gentle density in some residential neighborhoods, so that you can have buildings that are like fourplexes in residential neighborhoods. You could convert a house, or like in a development area, you could create housing, fourplexes which aren't huge, but instead of having one big house, like $1 million house or $2 million house for one family, you could have a building there that could house 4 families. And you could have a community where instead of having acres and acres and acres of single family homes, you could have little commercial areas as well, so that people would have neighborhoods where they'd have a corner store, they'd have their youth hub, their social hub. These are kinds of things that will help create communities where people want to live. Thank you. So I think we'll quickly move on to healthcare. We have a couple minutes before our break, so let's just keep our answers about a minute each. And healthcare is obviously one of the biggest issues that always comes around every single election, whether it's provincial or federal. It doesn't seem like anybody's doing anything about it if we have to keep talking about it. So during the last election, Ross Memorial Hospital was an issue, and now this election, the Minden Hospital is now an issue and has taken center stage. So in regards to Minden, Tom, does your party support fully reopening the Minden Hospital?
The reopening the Minden ER would be a very helpful thing in our community. There's no doubt about it. The health budget for successive governments is the biggest budget. It's the hugest budget, and successive governments have often gone in to create efficiencies in their healthcare budget in order to create resources for some of their other pet projects that they might have. And so spending the money that you say you're going to spend is going to go a long way to making sure that these cutbacks are not going to be an issue. So you want to have a government that says, this is what our healthcare budget is going to be, and then spend that healthcare budget. Don't keep mining it for other projects that you want to use that you don't even have a budget line for. For example, the $200 that many of us just received. There's no budget line for that. Where does that money come from? Why can't that $6 billion or whatever it is be put towards the hospitals and schools and staffing that we need?
Thank you. And Barbara, in regards to Minden, does your party support reopening of that Minden Hospital?
Absolutely. Merritt Stiles, our leader, was here last summer fighting with several of our MPPs, Chris Glover, Franz Gillenos, to try to stop the closure of the Minden ER. We're long on record for supporting it to be reopened, and I have commitments from the NDP to reopen the Minden ER straight away should we be able to form government. It will be one of my very highest priorities as your MPP to make sure that that happens. There is no reason for it to have closed. In fact, it is actually so dangerous for local residents and visitors in our area that it did close. Minden and Haliburton area are home to so many families and a high percentage of seniors, but also a lot of tourists that come to stay in the summer months and also in the winter for a different variety of activities. And having a functioning ER where people are most able to access it is so very, very important. A 45-minute ambulance ride could mean the difference between life and death, literally. We need to ensure our health care is well-funded, absolutely available, and in the communities where the people are. So we can't just keep creating larger and larger pockets of service gaps. We need to make sure that our healthcare is where people in our communities need it the most. And closing the Minden ER was an absolute failure on the Ford's government.
So on day one, you'd open it right back up?
We would have to staff it back up and get everything back in place. I don't think it would open on day one, but we would certainly start the process immediately. So it would take a bit of time to rehire, resupply, and then get it back open. I mean, it's still there, so there's a process, but yes.
Okay, thank you. So we do have to go to another break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about infrastructure as well as education and maybe childcare if we get it, but it doesn't look like we're getting anywhere right now. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Your Vote on Your TV with the Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes candidates, Barbara Doyle and Tom Regina. So as I said before the break, we're going to continue on our conversation and talk a little bit about infrastructure, which most people deem as like a jobs creator. So Doug Ford has made it very clear to audiences around Ontario that he is very serious about building a tunnel under the 401 to ease congestion concerns for commuters, of which many of these in the riding use daily or at least weekly. Though critics and experts warn that this is unlikely to be completed, what is your position, Tom, on highway expansion versus investing in rail and public transit?
Oh, rail and public transit is a much more green solution to transportation, obviously. Spending the amounts of money that are going to be earmarked, and we don't really even know how much it's going to be, but you know that it's going to go well over whatever they say that it's going to go. Why? There are so many other issues that we have. Why spend that? There are other ways of alleviating some of the gridlock problems on like for the 407. You just make that free, and we can't, or rather, you can't make it free because it's a private business at the moment. It didn't used to be, but you can certainly make it so that the government is paying for truckers, for example, to be using the 407 and get them off the 401. If you've been ever driving on the 401, you know that there's a lot of trucks. And if all of those trucks were using the 407, which is much less used roadway, the GTA traffic problems will be alleviated. So the infrastructure for the tunnel for the Toronto area is to me is not as important as the infrastructure needs of the various communities around the entire province. Yes, there are a lot of people in the province that live in the Toronto area and commute and use those highways, but there are many more people in the province of Ontario that have other infrastructure concerns, and some of their infrastructure needs have been, there's been downloading of the costs. So the infrastructure costs for the municipalities have increased, and those have to be, they have to get relief. So the municipalities will have access to more money in order to deal with the infrastructure projects that they need to have going. So I'm much more for public transit and for fast rail corridor through the GTA, like Ottawa to Windsor. A lot of people would use that who would normally use their cars.
Thank you. And Barbara, what say you on the investment of roads versus the rail and public transport investments?
Roads is the number one complaint I hear pretty much no matter what level of government we're talking about, no matter what election is called. It's people at the door saying, you know, fix my road, or this road's terrible. We have such an opportunity here to look at not only ensuring the current roads that we have, the current highways that we have, to be well maintained. And I mean, we joke that we have two seasons. We have winter and construction on the roads. If we're already having trouble getting construction or repairs done on our current highways and byways, what makes us think that a tunnel underneath would make it any better? I think it would actually make it so much worse. But we could also be looking at, you know, extending GO service out to our area. We've been hearing so many requests for that. So many new people to our communities are either commuting into Durham or GTA, and they'd love to see even a GO bus from here to Oshawa to be able to cut down on commuter traffic and cut down on, you know, using their own cars. Much greener solution. We've also heard so many people in our community asking for more public transportation within our communities, and actually connecting the communities that we have here. We do have a problem with the municipality having to have taken on all of those downloaded costs. And while there might be 5 people on the bus compared to a bus that has, you know, 40 people on it in Toronto, are the people in our riding less deserving of really good public transportation? Just because there's maybe 5 people on one round around, maybe 10 next time, but the cost of gasoline is very high, and the cost of maintaining our buses is also high. But the infrastructure to improve public transportation between our local communities would be a priority for me to serve the people who live here. I think that we could do a lot to move people around and improve tourism and the economy between our different communities in Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes and the Brock region.
Thank you. And Tom, I want to ask you, what role should the provincial government play in ensuring that new developments, including proper roads, transit, services, what role should the province play in the construction of those?
Those are provincial excuse me, those are provincial government responsibilities.
Yeah.
So they should play a primary role. Those are
Well, do you see that the government should bid off those projects to private businesses, or should the government themselves be doing that?
The government isn't a construction company, so yes, they bid. Bids go in. They have an area. They say they have something that they want to develop, and they make the plans for it. And they make the plans available to the industry, to the construction industry, or to whatever, whether it's roads or buildings. And then the bids come in, and then they look at they look at the bids, and they choose who's really high bid or who's really low bid, or are these realistic bids. So there's the whole process that goes on with that, and that's what the government does. There are people who are in business, and the government isn't there to take over the business.
Is that working today?
Is that working today?
Yeah.
Well, roads are being built. There's projects going on all over the place. I'm not involved in the business, so I don't really know what you mean by is that working.
In terms of just how much should the government play in actually investing in jobs to create proper roads, transit, and construction units? But I will put that question again to Barbara here. So what role should the government play in facilitating or creating jobs to fund and build roads, transit, and other projects?
So I'm not speaking as to platform at this moment. This would be just my opinion. I do think that the government should play a larger role in core services. We've seen what's happened with the private, the slow, well, maybe not even slow, privatization of healthcare, the underfunding of public education. When you look at the core services that our people need to, live a decent life, be healthy, be educated, and actually move goods and services and themselves around the province and through Canada, would it be more cost effective to create jobs at a provincial level for road crews, maybe not necessarily for the high level, really experienced skilled trades that maybe would be used a little less often, but general trades for roads and construction could be a really great opportunity to take the profits out of those bidding wars. Mm-hmm. It would still create jobs, whether it's for private contractors or the government. The jobs would still be there, and perhaps more of them, because if you're taking the profit margins out, there would be more opportunity for wages.
And Tom, what would your party's stance be on public versus private ownership of infrastructure that is built, such as highways or utilities, water services?
Well, I don't think I've seen a particular party stance on that, but what draws me to the Green Party would tell me that what we're looking for not for profit solutions to things like healthcare and hospitals. Not a private hospital. If you want to get if you want to get, for example, if you need a cataract surgery, you can wait for a long time to get it. However, like with your health card, but if you pull out your credit card, you can go and get it fairly quickly, and it's going to cost you a lot more money. And if you have that money, that's wonderful. But there's a lot of people who don't, and so that makes it more difficult for the healthcare system to act quickly. So the not-for-profit models, I think, is the way, as Barbara mentioned, can create jobs or have take the profit margin out, and that goes more towards wages and towards capital costs that are required for these projects to come to fruition.
Awesome, thank you. And Barbara, same question to you. What is your stance on public versus private ownership of infrastructure, roads, hydro, utilities, water services?
I think that there are definitely sectors that should be publicly funded and publicly owned compared to privatization. We have seen where the province has sold off, as an example, the 407, and what a ridiculous mistake that was. It was such a cash cow for the province. If they're going to have a toll highway, the tolls should be coming to the province. We've seen what has happened with the LCBO. The revenues from LCBO are plowed right back into Ontario core needs. Healthcare, education, all of these things that we are building. We've seen Doug Ford spend $1 billion to cancel the beer storage contract, and 35 beer stores have closed, and those people have been all put out of jobs for no good reason. So there's money being spent on, to put beer in corner stores. And as a mother, I'm actually so distressed that that has happened. I see, advertising on the pump to go buy beer while I'm driving. I worry about the safety issues of that, but it also takes the profits that would have been made at the beer store and not plowing it back into Ontario, but instead putting it into corporations. I don't see how that serves Ontario. If there are logical services that could be done by the government and the revenues put back into services for our people, that makes a lot of sense to me. There's definitely room for corporations and private interests and absolutely capitalism, but maybe not with our core services where people need them the most.
Thank you. So now it comes to this part of the debate where our candidates here can give their 2-minute closing statements, and we will have Tom Regina do that first.
Okay, thank you. As we've been talking, it's the role of government to give us services of healthcare and education and employment. And what we have been seeing is a gradual erosion of those particular services, and there's really no need for that. We have the budget, we have the wealth. We're a wealthy province, and I think what we're seeing is some manufactured crises and the gradual introduction of private ownership into what are generally public services. As mentioned about the 407, we as taxpayers paid for that, and then it was sold off by the government to improve their books. So what we need to do as a government is to say that we're going to do something and then do what we said we're going to do, especially with the budgets are concerned. And I would like to take this moment to say that the Green Party has sound, caring, achievable solutions for the challenges that we're facing, and that this is a really good time to vote for your Green candidates.
Thank you. Barbara, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So this election is more important, I think, than any we've had in recent decades. We have a province that is increasingly falling apart and under threat. The NDP has plans to help people on a daily basis through housing programs, affordability, improving the lives of our most vulnerable through ODSP and OW rate increases, so to double those rates, and also monthly grocery rebates to help people on an affordability level. We've had a government that hasn't fought for the people here Absolutely not. We have an opportunity to kind of break up with this government. It's a bit of a toxic relationship, and try something new. We have lots of different parties that are, kind of vying for your vote. We are worried about strategic voting in this riding and splitting the vote between the more left-leaning parties. It's a bit of a challenge because we do have some similar platforms, not everything, but some. We need to look at who would maybe have the best opportunity to change the seat and be able to try something different, try a new way of governing to really put the people first rather than corporations. I live here, I work here. I am so proud to be a member of this community, but I look to my children and my grandchildren and the future that they have as well, and I'm scared for them. I am scared of what's going to happen for their futures, and I think a lot of families are also thinking about that as we're going into this election that was not needed, but is an opportunity that's before us to really have our voices heard by going to the polls and voting, casting the vote. I would look forward to seeing everybody at the polls, at their doors, at debates, and hopefully we will get the Ontario that everybody deserves so that families can do better for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to first thank you, Barbara and Tom, for actually coming here today, showing up, having a discussion with us. Laurie Scott, the PC candidate, again, refused all our correspondence and obviously was not here. And the Liberal candidate is yet to be known. They have until, I guess, 11:59 today to find themselves a candidate. So again, thank you, candidates. The election is on February 27th, and so I hope everyone out there in Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes-Brock go out and vote and not have it be such a low turnout election. Thank you so much.